the question was raised, why is Jesus controversial? I could tell you first why he was controversial before, and versus today why he's controversial. Before, going back 2,000 years, 2,000 plus years, he came back into town after being away for 11 years. He came back with a different type of spirituality. He came back dressed differently. Why did he come back? He came back because his father was ill. He had to handle family business. And it was time for him to come back. He knew it was time for him to start his public ministry. So when he came back, he had plans. He had plans on how he was going to handle situations at home, how he was going to care for his mother, and also find a bride, which he already knew who she was. Well, controversy surrounded him when he came back being and identifying himself as the Son of God. Now, he didn't immediately do that. It wasn't until he started his public ministry that these facts became known to people. He wasn't out there saying, I'm the Son of God. But he did come back with a spirituality that was different from the religion of the time, what he was raised with what people were familiar with. Because again, he was young, he had a plan, he had a mission, and he knew how to talk with people. He wasn't new to the process of teaching or talking with people because he had been doing this for the last 11 years. First as a student and then becoming a master at spirituality. He did these things while he was away, and when he came back, had every intention of doing these same things. The spirituality that he taught was one and the same with who he was, is, and always will be, and that's the spirituality of God. Making everyone feel that no matter who they were or what they did, that they were still loved by God and they were children of God. And the religion of the time didn't teach this. And you were taught more or less a kind of judgment that everybody feels today. For example, people didn't like tax collectors. Well, people still don't like tax collectors. People were taught not to like a certain class of people or a certain culture. That's where the Samaritans come in, and that's why we said earlier that it didn't matter to Jesus the gender, the culture, the race, the nationality, the age group. It didn't matter to him because he was comfortable with talking with everyone. And being who he was, is, and always will be, those things aren't going to matter. And they were absolutely those things that bothered a lot of people, including the religious leaders at the time. So much so that in a specific talk, where they would follow him with the masses of people that would also follow him, they had to call him out on it. They said, we know you don't judge anyone. We know that you see the person for who the person is as a child of God. That's how they began. But we know absolutely that it did bother him. It bothered people, the way he spoke with women and the way he taught everyone. And it's always mentioned in even traditional scriptures, or I should say with traditional scriptures, that he ate and sat with sinners. And we often wondered, well, no one ever pointed out who the sinners weren't. But Jesus looked at these comments as his being with and eating with tax collectors and those people that others considered were of ill repute. But it didn't matter to Jesus. He sat and talked with them. They laughed together. He invited himself to people's homes, people that other people would never sit and eat with. He listened to and talked to them about about God. They had questions. Like, does God like that person? He's a tax collector. Today we find the same thing. Actually, he's a very good role model for someone who has always been told you could do anything with your life or be yourself. Don't let people stop you from being who you are. And the moment you try to do that, you're judged. For example, you go to work for the first time. You went for an interview. You were hired. You're excited. It's your first day at work. And you walk in and it's as though you brought the plague in with you. Everyone looks at you as like, ugh. On the other side of the coin, okay, these people who are hiring you desperately need you to fill this position. They're complaining that there's not enough people to do the work. And yet you come into this position and they're looking at you again like you have the plague. What do you want? Who do you please? Truth is, you don't please anyone except yourself. You have to realize, first of all, if you're in a working situation, that you're not there, okay, to make everybody happy. You're there because you have a skill or a talent and you're able to do this job. The rest will work out. For some reason, people just don't readily accept someone new. Even though at the time of Jesus, he grew up there. Because he left and came back, they were happy with the fact that he came to fulfill his duties. But at the same time, they didn't want him hanging around. He was different. So what did he do? He was himself. They complained about him when he ate and drank with people. They would compare him to John the Baptist, who fasted and didn't drink. They held him to laws that were made by men. And even though they said they came from God, the interpretation of a human being, their interpretation of God's law isn't always correct. And a lot of times back then, especially when prophecy said that Jesus would meet with a rebellious people, it was based on the fact that even though they didn't all fulfill God's law themselves, they held you in judgment of God's law. They held you in judgment. It's like, you're breaking God's law. So they tried to trip him up on different teachings, whereas he always had an answer. And I guess what I'm saying is, you have to know yourself. You have to be confident in yourself to do the things that you know in your heart you have to do, despite what anyone else says. So it was his own confidence in how he was going to approach to people, as he had been doing the 11 years he was away, with a group of people that he knew from his birth religion were going to see things very differently by the things that he was telling them versus by the things they were taught. Jesus, confident in what he wanted to bring about, which was the fact that God loved everyone and he wasn't looking to punish everyone, made him popular. Knowing that the people could then rely on God's love made them feel stronger. Just imagine what they felt like for the first time, hearing that God loved them and that he knew they would make mistakes, and he knew that they could learn from their mistakes, and they could make these weaknesses strengths for themselves and other people. That love was what was powerful behind these words. Not punishment, not fear. Love. So when Jesus sat and talked with people who other people shunned, those around him watched him, because he made them realize that we all belong to one family, the human family. And that once we start judging others, we start separating ourselves from this family and end up with groups of people that can't see eye to eye on anything. We're being divided today by politics, by religions, by cultures. Even though so many claim to follow Jesus and love Jesus, they're the first to judge and attack. Jesus didn't judge and attack. So if you want to be like Jesus, one of the most important things you have to remember is that we belong to one human family under God who loves us. A God who loves us. And not just a male God, but a male and female God, a father and a mother. And that's what we teach in the Asian religion. That's what Jesus taught when he walked the earth. We are one family. We have a Father in heaven, and on earth as his mother lived here as a human being who was part of this amazing plan to bring God's people, his children, back to God, that why can't we? It has to stop. This division has to stop. If you love Jesus, then your intention should be to bring everyone together. So Jesus brought unity in a sense and became controversial today because people re-imaged Jesus to become the one responsible for division. How did they do that? They did that by choosing to divide everyone, to judge it by judging everyone in the name of Jesus. People judge in the name of Jesus. You're an abomination. You're no good. We are the ones. We carry. Jesus is not a religion. Jesus is God, and that's what he showed everyone. He helped those others wouldn't help. That's the parable of the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan. Each of us on this earth as a part of the human family carries a part of God that makes us a family. And you know families. Not everyone is the same. Not everyone likes everything about the other. That's sad that you can't be yourself, even in your own family. You can't say that's okay. You can't hurt someone in your family and say that's okay because Jesus said. Jesus didn't say that. But what he did say is, if you love me, you love God first, your neighbor second. If you love me, you pull your weight. You don't rely on people to give to you all the time without you giving something in return, without changing your life for the better. He didn't say you had to be a doormat. He said, you help those, and God will help those who help themselves. So he had a lot of teachings that people don't want to hear today. A lot of people just want you to give and give and give without anything in return. People want to judge you immediately, and they don't even have a reason why, except for the fact that you're the new person, the new kid on the block. Kids going to school or a different school for the first time meet with such hostility. Why? He never taught that. Jesus taught to welcome everyone and be kind. So today he's controversial because people want to use him as a means to segregate. We divide ourselves every single day in so many ways from the family. We separate others because we don't like something about them. Sometimes, as I said before, people interpret God's law the way they want to hear it, but not necessarily the way they should live it. Jesus wasn't a person to let you do whatever you wanted to do either. You had responsibility to the family. Everyone contributes, everyone helps. That's what families are supposed to do. You don't have in a family someone who just takes and takes and doesn't want to give anything in return. Can't even be kind when you can't give anymore for many reasons. One, the fact that you're not doing any good with it. In God's family, everyone receives and everyone gives. So when you have a new person starting work, before you judge them, let them contribute. That's what they're there for. Don't make going to work the worst thing in the world for them. Don't judge someone before you even know them. We judge people based on tabloids. We don't even know most of these people. You don't know what they have gone through. Have you ever judged anyone wrongly and found out they were the nicest person? We have become a people who are taking the place of God by judging by our standards. And the only thing I could say is, thank God, God doesn't follow our standards in judging us. Because there wouldn't be anybody worth living. In the eyes of men, in the eyes of women, in the eyes of children, unless Jesus is present, unless you know the truth about how this man is so controversial, you'll never be whole. You'll never be the person that you want to think you are. You'll become the person that everyone thinks you are. That's not a good thing. I guess what I'm saying is that we should be more focused on the person that God knows we can be. The person that looks to help someone, who welcomes others, who welcomes the talents and skills of the person hired to do a job that we needed done. To not judge everyone because we want to feel that we are afraid that they will outdo what we're doing. To try to make a point of showing people that rather than choose to not like someone for whatever reason you have, if the person is skilled and talented despite their race or color, culture, religion, work ethic, has to be that which includes recognizing the talents of others. If you do that, if you recognize that even in the home, a husband recognizes the talents and skills the wife has, and the wife the same with the husband. As in the workplace, working together, you're going to have the example of what was always meant to be for us. That we all work together. That everything will grow and flourish. And if we don't, it's going to continue to be turned into chaos. And that's not what Jesus intended. So, as I said, he's controversial today as much as he was before. But he's only controversial today because just like human beings before, we decide who Jesus is. We don't accept Jesus for who he really is. Things get too hard, blame the messenger. Don't take a look at yourself, because I guarantee you won't like yourself. Take a look at who you could be. Take a step back and look at yourself and ask yourself, have I become the person I dreaded most in my life? Because the funny thing is, oftentimes people didn't like someone, their mother, their father, or whoever, and they don't have a kind thing to say, but they become that person and refuse to change. Jesus gave everyone that ability to understand and to recognize the fact that you could change. Change. Thank you.